What's up? I'm a little rusty. I'm frustrated. I bet you're asking yourself why I'm frustrated. Fox 9 News, the local Fox outlet for Minnesota, posted an article about this guy who did some kind of cross-country biking feat that no one has ever done before. The guy was from Minnesota, which awesome, represent. In the photo, he was holding the Minnesota state flag, but it's the new Minnesota state flag. The second I clicked on the comments, I knew this was what was going to happen, but people were ignoring the fact that he did this huge thing that he did, solely focused on the new Minnesota state flag. People hate this flag. Not everybody. I wouldn't even say necessarily it's the majority, but people don't like this flag. And there's some key reasons why, but overall, this is really why I wanted to talk about it. Because I saw those opinions and I thought to myself, I don't think that those are very based in accuracy, to say it in a nice way. The truth is that before this whole thing, I didn't really know what the Minnesota state flag was of, because the original Minnesota state flag is super muddled. The design was actually created by two sisters that embroidered it, and so recreating the intricacies of the embroidery was super, super difficult. And for my whole life, I'd seen the flag, I could recognize it, but I didn't know what it meant. Actually, I have one. Let me show you. This is the old state flag. I do still have one in my house. I don't fly it outside. I actually prefer the new state flag, but I think that this one is still a piece of history for some of the reasons that I want to talk about today. Like I said, the original Minnesota state flag is muddled. Let me just pull up a photo of it. As you can see, I've been Googling this. Before all of this stuff, I didn't think a whole lot about it. But after reading why it was changed and how it was picked and what the design means, I think that the new one actually is really symbolic, and I love Minnesota. I think it represents us in a lot of ways, but people are stuck on, I think change is one of the big issues. That's the new one, but this is what the old one looked like. All right. Yep, so okay, this is actually the original one. There's actually a small difference between this one and a change that was made in 1983. However, this is the original flag right here. To start out, I wanted to kind of go over how Minnesota was formed, because I think that the context of that is important to why this original flag was picked and what the imagery is meant to mean. Honestly, unless somebody goes back and deliberately asks Seth Eastman what this meant, we can only guess. And I want to provide some of the context clues that I have that I think support the fact that this is super racist, to say the least. So Minnesota was founded in a lot of ways on pushing out Native American tribes that had already been there. I would say, kind of culmination of all of this was the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. The primary tribes that occupied Minnesota were the Anishinaabe, which the Europeans called the Ojibwe, and the Dakota people. In 1862, a lot of history between them kind of came to a head. Essentially, one of the things that happened was like the largest mass hanging in history, or mass execution in history. I think it was like 303 Dakota people were hanged for the public to see. It was brutal. It was disgusting. And the entire point of it was to drive the Dakota peoples out of Minnesota so that the white settlers could come in. That is really what led to Minnesota being founded and becoming, I think, the 32nd state. Let me double check myself there. What number state? Yeah, 32nd. So it became the 32nd state primarily because they pushed out these peoples and the white settlers and Europeans took over. And that's just what happened. That's not to put any bias on either side there. That's straight information. That's how Minnesota was founded. Now, knowing this, it does, I'm just randomly clicking, it does, kind of sway the idea that this image here could possibly be the white man watching as the Native Americans leave, and the initial Native American is looking away, like they are looking towards the direction that they're leaving. And there's other symbolism in this as well, like the gun. The stump is to show, like, what they would have considered agriculture, but what today really is deforestation. A lot of the colors and the old ribbon and all of that stuff, people think that it came from Civil War-esque flags, because during the Civil War, Minnesota flew a number of different types of flags related to that as well. So the original Minnesota flag actually started as a seal, Minnesota Territorial Seal, in 1849, and it was designed by Captain Seth Eastman. Before we say anything else about the design, I would like to point out that Seth Eastman married a 15-year-old Native American Dakota girl. That kind of tells you everything you need to know about the artist. So Seth really integrated into Native American society, but it was really more like, I would say it wasn't really him trying to learn about and adapt to the culture. It was more like Jane Goodall with apes. He was observing them. Yeah, he married a 15-year-old girl. So are we really gonna fucking go off of the opinions of this dude or any of the artwork that he's created? So in 1849, he created this seal, which would eventually become the design of the flag after the World's Fair. Along with this seal, his third wife, Mary Eastman, wrote a poem. The poem talks about how the white man came and took over the land and everything from the Native Americans. And it talks about the symbols of this seal that Seth Eastman, the pervert who married a child, created. It had a couple of minor changes after the seal was originally developed. Some of them related to the Civil War. In 1893, Minnesota created this contest for the 1893 World's Fair that took place in Chicago. Out of, like, I think it was 200 applicants, they picked this design. And this design, as you can see, is just another version of the state seal. My cat's water is refilling, and it's not quiet. It's done. This is the entire poem that she wrote. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's long. Can't speak. First paragraph here, we see the white man claim the rocky bluff and prairie land. The white man claims them now. What else does that mean other than they went to war against the Native Americans in the area and took the land from them? Anyways, that's how the flag started. This seal became the design 1893. It was created by a woman named Amelia Center. It was then embroidered by two, I think, Norwegian sisters. The rest is history, as they say. It was so hard to recreate because the embroidery was super intricate, as embroidery is. The flag had a couple of other additions to it. The addition of a red ribbon, the stars, those all mean different things that have to do with Minnesota's history. I forgot to point out that the original actually says, I am gonna fuck this up probably, L'Etoile du Nord. Anyways, it means the Star of the North, so just remember that. After this flag became popularized, people started to question the meaning behind it. What are we really trying to say here? The implication that people wanted it to have was that the Native Americans freely left to the west and then the white men took over and claimed the land. But that is not what happened. The same argument came up again in 1983. We don't like the implication of what this flag is trying to say. Also, it's messy as fuck. No one can tell what it is. In 1983, they decided to make a major change, and that was to... This is just so ridiculous. It's like putting a Band-Aid on the situation. It's almost more insulting, honestly, if you ask me, which no one did, but here I am. They changed the head on the Native American person to be facing the white settler. Now let me see if I can find a copy of that. Okay, yeah, here. Nope, that's not it either. 1983 is when it changed. Okay, yep. It was supposed to show that they were I don't know, willingly going that way, that they were coexisting. I don't really know. Instead of like, in 1983, essentially, they're recognizing that this is kind of a fucked up thing to have on your flag. Instead of just fully fixing the problem, they did this. They twisted it and changed the original meaning. All of that leads up to the modern change. The flag in 1983 is really kind of what we had until 2024. What's cool is that they implemented the change on May 11th, 2024, which is the date that Minnesota became the 32nd state. What's the problem? You might ask yourself. Why are people upset about this? Well, first of all, I do think that change with something so historical can be difficult for some people, because for some people, that's going to mean their Minnesota pride. That's going to mean their Minnesota ancestors. At the end of the day, it was really time for something different. It didn't really represent Minnesota's beliefs or values anymore. Biggest reason, number one reason why people are upset about this flag is because people think it looks like the Somalian flag. Here they are next to each other. The blue isn't the same. The star has a different number of points. The shapes are different. The way things are situated are different. If I didn't know any context behind these two flags other than putting them next to each other, I'd think that they shared mildly similar appearances. Why do people think it looks like the Somalian flag? This is because that Minneapolis has, I believe, the largest population of Somalian immigrants out of any state in the U.S. A lot of areas of Minneapolis are highly populated with Somalian immigrants. People associate Somalian immigrants with bad, in whatever context this is. It could be they're taking their jobs. It could be they're dangerous. It could be they're coming here to commit crime or bring drugs or whatever people believe. They didn't have anything to do with this new flag. And I'm going to show you that I genuinely tried to find conflicts of interest or like funding from Somalian immigrant groups or something that could have led to this. But in reality, what I think it is people associate immigration policies they disagree with Tim Walz, and Tim Walz had a small hand in this change. He is not the one who created the bill. The original bill to change the flag was created by a number of people. I can't remember all of them, but I know that Freiberg was like the primary author. Let's bring it up. Here it is right here. HF 274. This bill was created by Freiberg, and then I'll show you the other people's names as well in a minute. And it was actually analyzed by Matt Gehrig. I looked him up. He is a nonpartisan analyst. He helps Congress in general create bills, and he goes over them on both sides of the aisle. He's a non-biased person. By his job, he is a non-biased person. To Freiberg's main page. And he does also have a list of endorsements. His primary endorsements are unions. What was one of the other ones? LGBTQ and conservation efforts. Those are the big people that are funding this man. Not one of them had anything to do with even just immigration as a whole. I went through the list because there is a better list of everyone involved in this. Let me see if I can find it again. And none of them, not one of them, had any funding from anything that had to do with immigration, not even just Somalian immigration, but immigration as a whole. And that's every single one of these people here I clicked on. Now, if I'm wrong, please show me where they are funded by something that would lead you to believe that they were trying to make a Somalian replica with the new flag. Anyways, these are just the people that created the bill to get the flag changed. Now, after the bill passed, they created a state emblems redesign commission. And this included a number of people as well. And again, I looked into them and I couldn't find any funding from special interest groups. If I'm wrong, please tell me. Show me where I'm wrong. They didn't even create this. Like the World's Fair in 1893, we held another contest. This time we had 2,500 plus entries. And this committee chose the one that they thought was the most representative of Minnesota. The flag's new image was created by a man, I think his name is Andrew, in Laverne, Minnesota, which is a small town in a red county of Minnesota of like 5,000 people on a good day. Based on the artist, this probably isn't going to be anything to do with Somalia. Andrew Prekker. And he's like 24. This dude, I think here's what's the saddest thing to me is this guy made an incredibly thoughtful, super cool design. Now, to be fair, this is the design that he submitted, and it was edited to be even more clear and clean. And so the original reasoning and the colors and the shapes and the star, all of the reasoning remain. It was just slightly changed. This is him. I think the saddest thing about this is this dude put a lot of thought into this. Like, he was thinking of all the different symbolism that could go with it. It's super meaningful in relation to Minnesota, which I'll show you in a minute here. And he was probably proud as hell when it got picked. And now people just shit all over it. Even on topics that have nothing to do with the Minnesota state flag, like this guy making a cross-country trek holding the Minnesota state flag. All of a sudden, it's not about this cross-country feat, it's about the fucking flag. And this poor guy is probably just getting bashed on. Actually, you know what? I think probably a lot of people don't realize that he's the one that designed it. Maybe they would think differently about it if they did. Looking through all of the people of this committee, I couldn't find a special interest. It was picked to be this way because all of the different colors and shapes mean something. Well, if you haven't read this PDF, it goes over the new state emblem, which people don't seem to have a problem with, interestingly enough, and the new flag and the designs. Oh, my cat wants to come up. Come on. She gets so concerned when I'm just sitting here talking to myself. Yeah, the state seal, people don't have a problem with it. I think it's super cool. I love loons. Loons are one of my favorite animals. Here's the design again, and then this document lists the people who were involved with this, what their role was, and it goes through how it was chosen, why it was chosen, and what everything means in the flag, which is the part that makes me like the flag the most, because it really is thoughtful. On the left, we have the North Star, which, as you saw on the original flag, was the motto of the state. It was the state seal. It's a huge part of Minnesota history. Our hockey team used to be the North Stars. The North Star is on the rotunda, the floor of the rotunda of the Minnesota Capitol building. The left is supposed to represent the night sky, which the North Star lives in. The right is meant to represent the lakes of Minnesota, or known as the land of 10,000 lakes. And then the shape on the left here looks really similar to what Minnesota looks like on a map. And overall, and there's more, it breaks down literally every aspect of it. All of this to me says that these people genuinely were trying to make something symbolic of Minnesota without having any regard to the Somalian flag. So aside from like a passing similarity between the two flags, there's really no reason for me to think that that was implemented for that reason. I think what's actually happening here is a lot of people disagree with Tim Walz and the way that he governs, and a lot of them blame his immigration policies for an influx of immigrants, which then they believe commit more crime or take jobs or steal tax money or steal identities or whatever it may be. At the core, I think what it really is just this uncomfortableness with immigrants as a whole. And I think that people associate Tim Walz with being, I don't know, like a sympathizer with immigrants. And then they think him bringing in more immigrants is bad. And so anything to do with Tim Walz is automatically bad for these people. Another politician would be Ilhan Omar. She had nothing to do with this, by the way, but I can see the criticism of Ilhan Omar. I don't agree with everything that she says. And she has said a handful of controversial things about the United States and Somalia and things like that. And so I understand that people are maybe afraid of changes or something new or something different or something they don't understand. After doing the dive that I did into all of this, I genuinely don't see a reason for why that would be done. Let's just say they did it on purpose. Let's just say this is meant to look like a mini Somalian flag. Why? What's the reason? What would anybody get out of that? Tim Walz gets more Somalian immigrants. That's not how it works. I mean, you can't just change your flag to look kind of similar to another country and then hope that they come in. And then why would he want an influx of that? Like, what if you believe that this is like a knockoff of Somalia, what do you believe the end goal is? Who is getting rewarded off of this, and what is the reward? I don't understand. Because after all of the research I've done, it really just seems like people associate the flag with immigrants, and they blame immigrants for like every bad thing that happens.